wherein God, when Abraham, if you recall, Abraham wanted to pick Ishmael as his primary heir, and God encouraged him that no, Ishmael is not your primary heir. My appointed heir is yet to be born and will be born through Sarah. And of course, Abraham doubted that and laughed. That I think is still back in Genesis, maybe 10 or 11 or so. So Isaac is not only, people might mistake Isaac for a progenitor picked heir, but it's actually a God appointed heir, because again, he's actually not the first boy. The first boy, although illegitimate, is actually Ishmael. So it's important for us to note this, wherein Abraham picks his heir, his primary heir is a God appointed heir, and it's all about protecting the messianic line of promise given exclusive to Isaac. When you start off the book of Matthew, when you meet Jesus, we immediately see Jesus's genealogy, and we can really trace it back all the way to Judah, who is a child of Israel, and Israel, which we know as Jacob, is a child of Isaac. So this is about the protection of Jesus Christ, the Messiah. This is just to show you, I know that we've learned planning and execution, but my goodness, this is you seeing how God is a planner.
Yeah.
This is each and every one of us seeing how God is a planner, and how we can model that in our businesses, in our family life, and just in our interpersonal relationship. The person you see that God opens your eyes to see is the one that can be a steward, is the person you must protect and equip properly. And that is what we see Abraham do with choosing Isaac as his primary heir. It not only gives all that needs to be given to Isaac, it removes competition, anybody that can form disharmony, and sends them away with their own life startup package complete. Because we all know that Abraham was a wealthy man, and it's not like all those over 300 or thousands of servants and cattle will go to heaven with him. No. So the next thing we look at when looking at how Abraham shared his inheritance is, to the sons of his concubines he gave gifts and separated them from Isaac his son before his departure to rest in the Lord. Now at that time in the world, filial piety is what does filial piety means? It means respect for your parents, respect for the elderly, and respect for authority, established authority. And they believe if you can't respect your parents, what they teach you, their last words, what the clan elders say, that such a person is not a responsible person, and such a person cannot be trusted or given power, or things like that, and will be punished or even banished from that locality. So it's a big deal for Abraham to not only give them things, but to send them forth before he died, because due to filial piety, that is his standing word, and that must be the word that is obeyed. And there are witnesses to see that before Abraham died, and then they are sent forth. That way, nobody can come back and contend with Isaac and say, okay, he died. Nobody knows what happened in the home. Outsiders can form as like a witness in a home, and that's a lesson for everybody. And that is why even today's modern legal evolution, it was necessary for Abraham to carry out all that he needed to carry out while he was alive. That serves as a will, because there will be witnesses. And now the modern day, the evolution of all that we saw with Abraham, his actions, is what we see now in the modern day will. The modern day will, when you write your will, you have a legal representative, you have witnesses, you outline all your assets, who you want to give it to, and then your witnesses witness the will without the people who are receiving it being aware. So that the day the will is finally opened, it is registered. If some people register, it is when it's finally opened, the witnesses can verify because they were there the day you did it, and then it is read to the people who are recipients. They get what they want to get, which is why when you see really, 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 really wealthy people, they don't disclose who the witnesses to their will are, so that certain beneficiaries don't go and begin to compromise witnesses or threaten them or the legal representative or things like that. Certain wills are kept in vaults, bank safes, things it's a serious thing, it's a big deal. So all of this to say that you have to you know your family members, you know your children, you know what they are capable of. It is your duty as a parent and someone who is preparing their will to protect the God ordained here, to protect them, and at the same time provide for every other child and provide properly, adequately for every other child. Now, let's look at this model of his will execution. It is clear that a will involves, number one, the distribution of material possessions, and number two, the definition of territorial boundaries and living arrangements. That is why you'll see in a lot of wills, parents will give assets to children in the sense that they might give a house in a particular location to a particular child, which might be close to their business or where their family, where their in-laws are from, and they'll give another property to somewhere else, another child, or a child who seems to be more far away from home might get more liquidated assets, maybe like stocks and shares and things like that instead of a property. So the definition of territorial boundaries and living arrangements and the distribution of material possessions is very important. You must, before you're passing, set territorial boundaries for your children. It's very vital. So let's look at the biblical wisdom of living will execution. The biblical wisdom of living will execution. So Father Abraham executed his will while he was still alive, ensuring peace both before and after his death. In modern law, a will is typically read and executed only after the death of its owner. Unfortunately, this often brings immense pain to families because relatives may contest the will under various pretexts. However, while gifting and communicating intentions early is biblical, a legal binding written will remains vital for modern statutory laws. All right. So also Abraham made his boundaries clear while alive. So there's no surprises when he's dead. Very vital, very important. Now let's look at death. If you remember, the title is Marriage, Remarriage, Will, and Death. So let's move on to death. Death is inevitable. That's just like I said earlier, it's part of life, it's part of the cycle of life. It may arrive in old age or happen suddenly due to unexpected factors like sickness or accidents. So whenever death knocks, believers should face it with the hope and the order taught during the burial of Mother Sarah and Father Abraham. And let's look at Genesis 25 verse 7 to 8. Genesis 25 verse 7 to 8. And these are the days of the years of Abraham's life, which he lived 160 years. Then Abraham gave up the ghost and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. Wow. It is well. All right, let's look at burial. And a vital one is, who remembers Sarah's burial? The recap of Sarah's burial is applicable here. So Abraham was buried right beside her. This was also a common practice in the past. Legal couples are usually married and they share the same tomb. Their coffins are usually a dual coffin. They are buried together oftentimes. Even if they don't die at the exact same time, they are buried together at the same tomb or mausoleum, or even when it is a clan burial property or ground. Let me use the word ground, which is a modernized word. You see that based off family genealogy, legal couples are buried together. Concubines, however, may not be buried where the husband and the legal wife are buried, because they are oftentimes seen as, then in the past, concubines are seen as servants, like paid staff. They are seen as paid staff, servants, or depending on the status of the husband, they're seen as paid staff, servants, or slaves to the wife. So they are not buried where the legal wife and the husband is buried. So it's actually a very big deal. Abraham's marriage to Keturah is a big deal. Abraham's legal marriage to Sarah also is a big deal. And the legal and status differences between the children that comes Isaac and other children is a very large chasm, right? So